You were trying to make a point earlier, Tom.
Well, I would like to know, you have several components of an explosive device, and I'm not a bomb expert. I prefer to stay away from them as much as possible. But, you have the chemical material of the explosive stuff that was in it, and they'll be able to determine that pretty quickly. But the key factor is how does it detonate? And that's what I find the most unusual in this case is that there has to be some way to detonate it. Either there's a liquid component, you step on two liquids, they mix and they trigger it, or you light it with a fuse. And a lot of the injuries that people get over the holidays when they're trying to make their own explosive is when they light the fuse. The fuse is too short, they didn't do it right, and it blows up in their face or in their hands. And so I don't know, I'm not familiar with a device that other than war material with claymore mines or something where you can step on it and detonate it. And that makes it to me sound very suspicious.
Yeah, and they seem to indicate that they did not believe this to be shock sensitive explosive material. Panel, stand by for me. Let's go to this press conference in Central Park.
Chief John O'Connell, O'Connell. Today I was assigned as the duty chief. I'm going to give you some facts and figures. A lot of this is preliminary and subject to change. So at 10:52 a.m., 3 males aged 18 through 20 jumped off the rock behind me. As they did, an explosion occurred, injuring one of the victims. The male was transported to Bellevue in serious but stable condition. The explosion that could have been an experiment with fireworks or homemade explosives. We do not have any evidence of a constructed device or commercial-grade fireworks. We believe this could have been put here as some sort of experiment. We will be expanding our evidence search with our Vaporwake dogs to look for anything pertinent to our investigation. We will continue canvassing for additional video and witnesses who could be helpful to our investigation. At this time, we have no evidence that this is related to terrorism. There are no specific credible threats directed at New York or the July 4th celebrations. It is not unusual for the public to make or try to create homemade fireworks around the 4th of July, which is completely unadvisable. It also should be noted that the victim and his two friends, we don't consider them to be part of the construction of this object. Good. I'll take a couple of your questions. It was behind us on the path. It was secreted next to a rock. It was almost like it was hidden, but it wasn't where somebody ordinarily would have stepped. Josh. His foot landed on the device. It should be noted that his two friends didn't get injured, so it was concise right to the point where it was.
We could just ask Mark Torrey to come up and speak to that. We're not even going to call it a device, but Mark, you could, Lieutenant Mark Torrey, the CEO of the bomb squad, it's not a device, but Mark can talk to you at length about the fireworks.
Good afternoon. So as the chief alluded to earlier, this is a time of year when we will see a lot of experimentation, explosive experimenters, if you will. Their goal is to make a loud noise, maybe make a flash. They like to make noise and sort of play with fireworks, and it's even better if they can make their own. So we are not finding anything consistent with a constructed IED. This is clearly explosive material, but there's nothing to indicate that this was an explosive device that was placed or put in this area with a specific intent to harm any individuals.
This kind of thing at this time of year, have you ever seen anything like this?
We've seen a lot of experimentation with homemade fireworks. I've been with the bomb squad since 1993. I have never seen anyone step on a shock-sensitive explosive material, but we have had shock-sensitive explosive materials utilized in other ways, in nefarious ways. Not by stepping on, but I'm not going to go into how they could be used. So the answer is yes, we have seen shock-sensitive homemade materials utilized. I'm not going to answer exactly how I would arrive at that conclusion, but there is some forensic evidence that indicates that it was not meant to go off by somebody stepping on it. It may have not gone off at an earlier time and was just left there.
Josh. Minutes or a day, or do you have any sense?
Yeah, I'm going to say it was there longer than a day, but beyond that, I can't really nail that down.
Extent of the young man's injuries, please?
Let's let the fire chief discuss it a little bit.
'Cause, you know, he was in a state of shock. 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 He was in a state of shock
Deputy Assistant Chief Michael Gala, GALA, Manhattan Borough Commander. Around 11 o'clock this morning, we responded to the park for a report of an explosive device. When our units arrived, they came across a male with a traumatic injury to his left foot. As the NYPD secured the area, our members applied a tourniquet to the victim, stopped the bleeding, stabilized and packaged the victim, removed him to Bellevue Hospital. The last report from Bellevue Hospital was that the victim was undergoing surgery, and at this time we're continuing to maintain both an EMS and fire presence on the scene to support the NYPD as they continue with their investigation. Thank you. The last report from Bellevue Hospital was that he was undergoing surgery and his condition was stable.
Are you guys confident that since the park is still open, no other devices that may have been left are
Yeah. We did a video canvas. We sent out a lot of detectives. We have 7 Vaporwake dogs and 7 dogs, some of which are very special, the Vaporwake dogs. They're checking the park for any further explosives.
Anyone else?
about explosives in order to make this device or whatever you call it?
Ma'am, clearly, I would say that this is somebody that had knowledge of chemistry, but you don't have to be anything more than good with computers to get enough knowledge of chemistry to be able to create some of this type of material from readily available materials, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're interested in interviewing anyone who has any information today, going back a few days. If you had seen anything suspicious that you might think is relevant, 1-800-577-TIPS. Please call. It'll be kept confidential.
One more question.
So I use the term experiment because quite frankly, there are a cadre of people in the world who like to experiment with explosive materials. The reason why you see fireworks displays all goes back to people like that do it in a professional fashion. There are people that do it in an amateur fashion, but it doesn't make their material any less dangerous. So explosive hobbyist, fireworks, pyrotechnician hobbyist, that's where I'm going with that. Yes, sir. Lieutenant Mark Torrey, Torre, Commanding Officer, Bomb Squad.
Thank you very much.
All right, that is a press conference by the New York Police Department. A young man earlier today, his foot severed by an explosion. He jumped off of rocks along with 2 of his friends and ended up severely injured. We just heard from the NYPD. They don't think that this young man or his friends had anything to do with this, perhaps just in the wrong place at the wrong time, it appears. And I want to bring back now our CNN senior law enforcement analyst, Tom Fuentes. We also have retired NYPD detective Harry Houck, and we have Errol Lewis. He's an anchor for Time Warner Cable News. Okay, so Harry, this is interesting, and I think maybe one of our questions has been answered, right? Which is, why are they not closing off the park? Because this is sounding more like some sort of freak homemade fireworks accident than perhaps something even more nefarious or something that would be like a fashion IED, right?
Right, exactly. I mean, this happened at 11 o'clock, right? So we're talking, 6 hours already since this happened? They've had a chance to look at that bomb and say, okay, it's not made of C4 or any other kind of explosive, most likely, all right? And the look and the way the whole bomb was put together, they're probably, saying to themselves, well, okay, listen, this is some kid might have done something like this, might have left it there the last time it was there, tried to, like the police had said, maybe it tried to get the bomb to go off. It didn't go off. So they they just let it lay there. And then this kid stood on it. Now, apparently the police are pretty adamant that these guys aren't involved in it at all. So now they're going to focus on, all right, is there any way they're going to be able to trace anything found in that bomb or its remnants to be able to try and identify the perpetrator who left this bomb there? And by them doing a canvass in the park, going through the area, coming back around the same time tomorrow when they think the bomb might have been put there, to find out, people that are in the park constantly, maybe walking their dogs, something like that, or running in the park. Hey, did you see anybody in this area? And they'll probably go from that. And, it seems like the first thing to me was that the park was not evacuated. Then they pretty knew what happened here.
Yeah, that maybe they didn't think that this was something, I mean, obviously a terrible, terrible incident, but maybe they didn't think that this was something that had wider ramifications. Errol, you're a veteran New York City reporter, and one of the things that I thought was interesting there listening to NYPD and the bomb squad director was that they said part of it is the timing, that this is near July 4th, that there are a lot of people who experiment with making amateur fireworks. Obviously not recommended, and we're seeing perhaps some of the effects of that here. But just describe, I mean, is that something that that goes on in New York City, or that you would see sort of fireworks-related accidents around this time?
Sure. It's tragic. It happens every year. What people can do is hop in their car, and in about 90 minutes you can be in Pennsylvania, where they have very different laws regarding fireworks, and people will fill up their trunk with all kinds of illegal fireworks and drive back into New York and start firing them off. I mean, I was out with my wife just last night in Brooklyn, and, it was extraordinary that some idiots had taken a whole bunch of pyrotechnics and were just firing them off over a row of parked cars. And there were sparklers and flares shooting every which way, smoke all over the place. Unfortunately, we do not have a culture, even after the multiple terrorist attacks that we've survived here in New York, we do not have a culture of publicly shaming or calling the cops on people who do this stuff. It's just pretty much accepted that if you don't want to be around a lot of loud noises, you stay in your house or you leave town for the weekend. But this is far from unusual for somebody to go ahead and do this. And just to emphasize what Harry said, I'm about 100 yards right now from Central Park here in the New York City Bureau for CNN. And as I was parking and walking over here, there's no sense of alarm whatsoever. There were horse carriages, taking passengers and riding through the park. It's been sort of a casual, typical weekend, holiday weekend in every respect. So unless the NYPD is seriously off their game, and I doubt that, this is something that is the kind of one-off that's part of this unfortunate culture of people experimenting with stuff that they don't understand and can't really control.
Right,
I want to bring in CNN. Tom, hang on for just 1 second, because we do have sound from a couple of witnesses who describe what they saw. Let's take a listen.
And saw his friend standing there panicking, ran up the hill and found the young man laying on the rocks. His foot's all but detached. His friends claim he was just walking down the rocks and stepped on something. There was a divot in the ground. There was actually, it looks like a divot where there was an explosion.
I have no idea what it was. It sounded like a cannon. So that's why I thought it was like a 4th of July thing.
It sounded like a cannon, and even she, Tom, thought it sounded like something having to do with the 4th of July. These are the sounds that people are very familiar with this time of year. You were trying to make a point earlier, Tom.
Well, I would like to know, you have several components of an explosive device, and I'm not a bomb expert. I prefer to stay away from them as much as possible. But, you have the chemical material of the explosive stuff that was in it, and they'll be able to determine that pretty quickly. But the key factor is, how does it detonate? And that's what I find the most unusual in this case, is that there has to be some way to detonate it. Either there's a liquid component, you step on two liquids, they mix and they trigger it, or you light it with a fuse. And a lot of the injuries that people get over the holidays when they're trying to make their own explosive is when they light the fuse. The fuse is too short, they didn't do it right, and it blows up in their face or in their hands. And so I don't know, I'm not familiar with a device that, other than war material with claymore mines or something, where you can step on it and detonate it. And that makes it, to me, sound very suspicious.
Yeah, and they seem to indicate that they did not believe this to be shock-sensitive, explosive material. I'm going to stand you guys by for me for just a moment. Tom, Harry, and Errol, thank you. Let's stick around, please, so that we can talk a little bit ahead. We're going to get in a quick break and be right back.